The snow came down like a curse. Thick, wind-whipped sheets of it rolled across the Wyoming plain, erasing fences, tracks, and time. Calder Rourke stood in the doorway of his barn, collar up, hat low, the cold chewing at the bones of his face. His breath came out in sharp white puffs, and somewhere behind him the wind moaned like a widow. He hadn't spoken a word out loud in 3 days. The cattle were nervous. He'd just finished tossing them the last of the hay when he noticed something strange in the drifted white near the side wall of the barn. A trail, thin, staggered, half-covered, like something had stumbled through the storm. A person. Calder narrowed his eyes. He didn't like company, especially not out here, especially not uninvited. He reached for the Winchester that always leaned beside the barn door. Loaded, cold to the touch. He followed the tracks, boots crunching slow, careful. The wind howled louder now, swirling flakes around him like ghost dancers. He stepped past. The edge of the barn rounded the corner and froze. She was there, half buried in the snow. A woman. Apache by her features, clothes torn, dark hair crusted with frost, and skin mottled with bruises and blood. She was curled up like a dying deer, arms wrapped around her ribs, one leg twisted under her. No coat, just a threadbare blanket, and what looked like half a dress. Calder's heart lurched. For a moment he didn't move, just stared. A memory hit him, another snow, another body, smaller, lifeless, his wife. 2 winters back, blood on white. Frozen lips, still smiling like she hadn't realized she was dying. He blinked it away. The woman in front of him groaned. He lowered. The rifle dropped to his knees and checked her pulse with trembling fingers. She was alive. Damn it, he muttered. Lifting her wasn't easy. She was light, but stiff with cold and injury. Her feet were bare and purple. One ankle looked badly, swollen. He wrapped her tighter in the blanket and carried her inside, boots thudding on the wooden porch of the cabin he hadn't let anyone into since the funeral. The dog, Jasper, whined as Calder laid the woman near the hearth. The fire had burned low. He stoked it, threw on kindling, and flames leapt up, orange and ravenous. He stripped her carefully, not out of want, but necessity. Wet fabric, blood-soaked. One bullet grazed on her upper arm. No exit wound. Shallow, not fresh. She must have been running for a while. She stirred when he touched her ribs. Her eyes snapped open dark, wild, and full of fear. She thrashed, weakly, but with instinct. Easy, Calder said, holding her wrists. I ain't gonna hurt you. She said something in a language he didn't know. Apache, he guessed. It was fast and urgent, and her eyes burned with something that didn't match her broken body. I don't understand you, he muttered. But you're safe here. She didn't look like she believed him. But she didn't fight either. Her strength was spent. He cleaned the wound, muttering under his breath. She hissed through her teeth, but never screamed. She didn't cry, just stared at him with those unblinking, accusatory eyes, like she was waiting for him to reveal his true nature. He wrapped her arm, checked her feet. Frostbite was setting in. He rubbed them with oil, wrapped them in wool. Every part of him wanted to stop, let her be someone else's problem. But there was no one else. Not for 20 miles. In any direction. He covered her with blankets, fed the fire, and sat in the chair across from her. Jasper curled at his feet, sniffed toward the woman once, then tucked his head beneath his tail. The storm howled on. Night deepened. The wind broke branches. Calder didn't sleep. He watched the fire, watched her. Sometimes she moaned. Other times she whispered in her language, soft and mournful. A prayer, maybe. Or names. Calder looked at the bottle of whiskey on the mantel. He didn't touch it. Morning was a pale blue glow through frosted windows. The storm had passed. Silence blanketed everything. Calder stepped outside, crunching snow underfoot, and checked the perimeter. No fresh tracks. Just the ones from yesterday, his and hers. He came back in and made coffee. The pot hissed on the stove. The woman opened her eyes again. Her lips cracked as she tried to speak. "Water," she rasped. The accent was heavy, but the word was clear. He gave her a cup. She sipped, then coughed hard. He waited. "Name?" he asked. She blinked at him, slow. "Tahoma," she said. Voice like gravel, but proud. He nodded once. "Calder." She didn't react, just closed her eyes again. For the next 2 days, they didn't talk much. She slept, healed. He worked, fixed the fence, chopped wood, checked on the cattle, brought her food. Sometimes she ate. Sometimes she didn't. Her ankle swelled, turned colors. He made a brace from scrap wood and tied it with strips of torn linen. She hissed at the pressure but bore it. That second night, he caught her staring at the mantel where a locket sat, silver, old. His wife's. Her only keepsake. He saw her fingers twitch. "I wouldn't," he said, softly. Her eyes flicked to his. Something passed between them. Not quite fear. Not quite apology. Just understanding. That night, he left the locket in a drawer. She tried to leave on the third morning. He was feeding the horse when he saw her limping toward the trees, using a stick for balance. Still barefoot. Still injured. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He called out, voice sharper than he meant. She turned, wobbled, didn't answer. He marched toward her. "You'll die out there. You know that?" "I already died." She muttered. He stopped. "You don't know what waits for me," she added, eyes flashing. "Then tell me." She hesitated, then sank to her knees in the snow, shaking from more than cold. He didn't speak, just walked forward, picked her up. Again. This time she didn't fight. Inside, he set her near the fire again. Gave her a blanket, a bowl of stew. She didn't eat, just stared into the flames. "They killed my sister," she said suddenly. "In the camp. He said I'd replace her." "Who?" "White Fox. Apache name. But he's not right. He kills for control. Not honor. Not justice. Just to own." Calder's gut twisted. "You ran." "I ran." He nodded slowly. "Someone's chasing you?" She said nothing. She didn't need to. He moved to the window. The world outside was white and quiet, but something in his bones told him it wouldn't stay that way for long. Later, as the sun dipped behind the hills, he saddled one of the horses. Tahoma watched him silently. "You can't run," he said, adjusting the stirrups. "Not like this." "I have to." "You won't make it a mile." She looked away. "I can take you into town," he offered. "Sheriff there might—" "No." "Then what? You want to die here?" "In my home? Better than with him?" He walked to the hearth, knelt beside her. "Then stay. Rest. You'll need strength." She stared at him, eyes hard. Then finally she nodded. That night, someone knocked on the cabin door. Not loudly. Just once. Calder's blood ran cold. He grabbed his rifle, signaled for silence. Another knock. Deliberate, measured. Jasper growled low in his throat. Tahoma rose slowly, despite the pain in her ankle. Her face had gone pale. She whispered, "He's here." Calder moved to the door, looked through the narrow crack in the boards. No one there. Just snow, and a single figure on horseback in the distance. A man in a wolf fur cloak, sitting perfectly still. Calder shut the door, bolted it. "We've got a problem," he said. Toma. didn't flinch. He won't come tonight. He likes fear. He'll wait. Calder's jaw tightened. He turned to stoke the fire again, but all he could see in the flames was the look in her eyes when she said her sister's name. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't dream of his wife. He dreamed of blood in snow. The morning after the knock, the snow lay silent again, as if the world had exhaled and gone still. Calder didn't believe in omens, not really, but something in the air carried a charge that made his neck itch. It wasn't just cold it was waiting. Tahoma moved less now, conserving strength. Her ankle throbbed visibly through the brace he'd fashioned. She didn't complain. She didn't thank him either. But every so often, he'd catch her watching him, with something behind her eyes not trust, not quite but a question unspoken. Like she was still trying to understand why he hadn't handed her over yet. He wasn't sure he knew the answer himself. While he chopped wood near the tree line, he kept glancing back at the cabin. His mind played tricks. He saw movement in the trees that wasn't there, heard distant hooves that never approached. Paranoia? Maybe, or maybe not. Calder had learned the hard way that the second time you ignore your gut was the time you died. Inside, Tahoma sorted through what little dry food he had. Her steps were limping, slow, but determined. She didn't want to be cared for. She wanted control again, no matter how small. Calder respected that. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that her presence had changed the very air in the cabin. The shadows stretched differently. His wife's voice in his memory grew fainter. He didn't light the fireplace that night until late. He kept it low, just enough to warm the room. They spoke little over stew, the silence between them no longer sharp but oddly companionable. Then, while scraping her bowl clean with a sliver of bread, Tahoma said, "You fought in the Indian." "Wars." It wasn't a question. Calder's hand paused mid-reach for the pot. "I did," he answered after a moment. "Which side?" "I wore blue." A long pause stretched between them. The fire crackled like dry bones. "My people called your kind ghosts," she said, "because you killed from the distance. Like shadows. Your bullets found hearts before your face ever did." He didn't deny it. "And your people taught boys how to cut out tongues and wear scalps before they were men." She didn't flinch. "You think I came here to argue history?" He looked at her across the flickering light. "I think you came here to survive. Same as me." Her eyes searched his. She nodded once. No more was said. Later, when the wind rose again, Calder took the old shotgun and stepped outside, walking. The perimeter like he used to when his wife was pregnant, as if warding off threats with muscle and repetition. But now it felt different. The stakes had changed. He wasn't guarding just his grief anymore. When he returned, she was gone. The cabin door was open, a faint trail of prints leading out into the white. His stomach sank. Calder followed, cursing beneath his breath, rifle slung across his back. He found her past the ridge, near a twisted cedar tree, staring up into the hills. Her hair blew in black strands across her face, the moon casting silver on her cheeks. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. "I had to see," she whispered. "It's where he'll come from." She pointed toward the southern ridge, where broken trees lined a slope thick with snow. "He doesn't use trails. He watches first, sends others. He's a coward." "Then we know where to look," Calder said. "He's clever." "And he waits until you sleep," Calder frowned. "Noted." They stood there a while longer, side by side, not speaking. He didn't offer to carry her back. She didn't ask. It took twice as long, but she made it under her own power. He held the door for her in silence. The next morning brought more than cold. While checking the barn, Calder noticed the back door ajar. Only a crack, but it hadn't been that way yesterday. Jasper sniffed furiously at the floor, whining at the snow just inside. Someone had been here. He followed the tracks through the field, heart thudding. 2 sets. One small barefoot, likely hers from before. The other, fresh, booted, heavy, headed toward the tree line, then vanished. He returned with jaw clenched, bolting the barn and cabin both. When he told Tahoma, her mouth tightened into a thin line. "They're testing you," she said, "seeing if you scare easy." "I don't. They'll try harder now." The words hung heavy in the room. That night, he taught her how to use. A rifle dot, it wasn't easy. Her hands were strong, but unused to the cold metal. He stood behind her, guiding her grip, her aim. She trembled slightly, whether from pain or fear, he couldn't tell, but her focus was like steel dot. He set up a can on a stump. She missed the first 2 shots. The third rang true. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The shift in her posture said it all. Later, by the fire, Calder spoke again. "My wife was named Elise. She used to sing to the chickens like they were churchgoers. Hated whiskey. Loved cinnamon. Died giving birth to a son who didn't make it either. Whole house went. Quiet after that. Stayed that way." Tahoma didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was low, thoughtful. "My sister's name was Neela. She danced better than anyone. She'd make the elders laugh. The war chief wanted her. Took her. Broke her. Said I was next. Why didn't you fight back then?" "Because we don't fight gods when we're made into ghosts." Calder leaned forward. "You're not a ghost." "No," she said. "But I think I was once." In the silence that followed, something in the cabin shifted. The weight of the dead lessened. Just a fraction. But it was something. The next attack came the following dusk. Calder heard it first, a crack in the distance, not a tree breaking. A footstep. He barely had time to shout before the glass shattered behind him. A bullet tore through the room, embedding in the far wall. Jasper barked wildly. Tahoma hit the floor behind the overturned table. Calder returned fire blindly through the window. A scream followed. And silence. He rushed outside, rifle ready. Snow churned with movement. One figure was retreating, dragging something, maybe a wounded man, into the trees. Not another lay in the snow, face down, motionless. Calder flipped the body. Apache. Young. 17, maybe. Eyes glassy, hands calloused. A bone knife strapped to his chest. Tahoma stepped up behind him. She stared down, unmoved. "Scouts," she said. "He always sends them first." "You recognize him?" She shook her head. "No, but I know what comes next." They buried the body in silence. No prayers. No names. The following morning, Calder packed the barn with traps. Sharpened boards, loops of wire, tools he hadn't used since his army days. He showed her how to reset them, how to fire the shotgun if needed. She followed every word, absorbing tactics like bread soaking broth. He caught her staring at the map on his wall, the one with the cattle trails and supply routes. "You planning on running again?" he asked. "No," she said. "I'm planning not to die." For the first time, he let out something like a laugh. Short, rough, startled him more than it did her. That night, they sat by the fire, closer than before. She told him about the river ceremonies, about how her people used to float fire along the water to carry messages to the spirits. Calder listened, quiet, not just out of respect, but need. Her voice had become something steady in a world he'd forgotten how to navigate. "I used to think this place was a grave," he said. "Now I'm not sure what it is." "It can be both," she replied. He looked at her hands, how scarred they were. She looked at his, how calloused and still. They didn't touch, but the air between them felt warmed out then, just before dawn. Something. Strange. He woke to Jasper growling, not barking, but growling low and deadly. Calder grabbed the rifle and rose. Tahoma was already on her feet, favoring her leg but ready. A figure stood just outside the window. Not hiding Calder pushed the curtain aside with the barrel dot. It was him, the war chief. Broad shoulders, painted face, pale Wolf fur cloak. He didn't move, just stared, then lifted something in his hand. A necklace, Neela's necklace, Calder guessed. He dropped it in the snow, mounted his horse, and vanished into the trees. When Calder turned, Tahoma was staring through the window. Her face was stone. "He's not just here to take me back," she whispered. "What then?" "He wants you to watch." Calder didn't blink, "and I'll make sure he regrets it." The fire crackled behind them. Neither of them looked away. Calder didn't sleep that night. Not after seeing the man in the wolf fur cloak standing just beyond the window. Something in the stillness of that encounter, how calm, how certain the war chief had been settled into Calder's chest like a stone. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. A silent one, loud enough to shake the walls. Tahoma hadn't said a word since. She sat by the fire, legs tucked beneath her, eyes open but unfocused. He offered her food. She didn't move. The locket the war chief had dropped Neela sat on the table between them like a curse dot in the hours before dawn. Calder cleaned every rifle he owned. He sharpened blades, checked snares, refilled lanterns. He knew how to prepare for a siege. He'd done it before in another life, in another uniform. But this time, the reasons were different. It wasn't a duty or an order. It was personal. When the sun rose, gray and watery, he took her outside. "You need to learn more," he said. "Quick." She nodded, wordless. They started with traps, pressure triggers, wire loops, spring-loaded spikes set in the snow where no one would think to look. Tahoma was a fast learner. Her body still moved stiffly, but her mind cut sharper than any blade. She adjusted one of the snare traps with a flick of her wrist, improving tension without being told. Calder didn't say anything, but he noticed. They trained every hour they could. She asked about rifle range, wind, reload time. He answered, never coddling. They were partners now, though they'd never spoken the word. By the second evening, Calder showed her how to use the Winchester. "Hold it like this," he said, adjusting her grip. "You fight the rifle. It'll punish you. Work with it, and it'll sing." She shot a rusted horseshoe at 20 yards. Missed the first, hit the second. "Better," he said. Again. She hit it 3 more times before lowering the gun. "I won't let him take me," she said quietly. "You're not alone anymore." Calder replied. That night, the war chief sent another message. Not with words, with fire. They were in the cabin when the barn exploded into orange and black. The heat hit the walls like a blow. Calder ran outside, rifle ready, only to see the structure fully ablaze. The horses screamed inside. He cursed, sprinted forward, pulled the doors open, but the flames already ate the walls. Only one horse bolted out, wild-eyed and burned. The rest didn't make it. He didn't see who had lit it. When he returned to the cabin, face streaked with smoke and sweat, Tahoma was standing near the edge of the porch, rifle in hand. "We have 1 horse left," he said, voice like gravel. "Then we only need 1 plan." The fire burned all night. Its glow reached the hills, a signal fire announcing to anyone watching that the war had begun. By morning, the barn was nothing but charred ribs. Calder buried what was left of the animals. He didn't speak during the work. Neither did she. The silence wasn't grief, it was focus. Resolve had replaced mourning. Why does he wait? Calder asked that afternoon, as they sat by the fire sharpening knives. Why not just come? Because he wants us to tear ourselves apart first. Tahoma answered. He's used to fear doing most of the work. I've faced worse than him. He hasn't faced us together. That night, Calder gave her a revolver. She checked its cylinder without needing instruction. The wind changed direction on the third day, south to north. Tahoma stood at the tree line, watching the horizon. He'll come with the wind, she said. He believes it carries spirits. He wants them to watch. They spent the day setting more traps, fortifying the cabin windows, moving supplies into the root cellar. Calder turned his wife's old sewing room into a fallback point rifle stacked powder dry. It felt like betrayal. It also felt like survival. By sunset, snow began to fall again. Thick flakes, soft but steady. Calder watched them from the porch, boots planted, rifle across his knees. Tahoma came out beside him, wrapped in a deerskin cloak she'd made from salvaged remnants in the barn. Her eyes scanned the trees constantly, never resting. You ever think about after? Calder asked. After? If we survive, what comes next? She was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't think that far. The future always betrayed me. Maybe it's time we betray it back. She turned to him. For the first time, she smiled. It was faint, brief, but real. You sound like someone who forgot how to give up. I did forget, he said. I forgot everything but this place. And now, you. She didn't look away. In that quiet moment, under the falling snow, something between them settled. Not romance, something older, deeper. Like two ghosts agreeing to live. Then Jasper barked. Sharp, urgent. Calder spun. Figures emerged from the trees. 6 of them. War paint, bows, rifles. One rode a pale Mustang. A man in the wolf cloak. Calder and Tahoma ducked inside. Doors locked. Traps set. They'll circle first, she said. Try to draw us out. They'll regret it. The first came from the back. A scream cut through the air. A snare trap snapped, and someone was dragged screaming into the underbrush. Then silence. Another tried the front. The pressure spike drove through his foot. Calder finished him with 1 shot before he could scream. 2. Down, Calder muttered. 4 left, Tahoma said. The others regrouped. Calder could see them moving cautiously through the trees. The war chief remained on horseback, unmoved. A general watching pawns. Suddenly, a bottle flew through the air, shattered against the cabin. Flames spread up the wall. Molotov. Fire! Calder shouted. Thom grabbed the water bucket, doused the flame. Calder shot into the woods, forcing the enemy back. Another firebomb came from the side. Tahoma shot the thrower before it left his hand. Then chaos. 2 enemies rushed the front door. Calder shot one, fought the other hand to hand. Blood sprayed the walls. The man was strong, but Calder was stronger. Years of solitude had made his hands hard. He bashed the intruder with the butt of his rifle, kicked him through the door. Another came through the window. Tahoma met him with a knife. They tumbled to the floor. She slashed his throat with the blade Calder had given her. Breathing hard, she stood. Blood covered her hands. She didn't shake. How many? Calder asked, panting. 1 left, she sighed. Then silence again. The war chief dismounted. He walked toward the cabin slowly, deliberately. No fear, no rush. He's coming, Tahoma whispered. Let me face him. No, it has to be me. He'll kill you. Not before I finish what he started. Calder looked into her eyes. Then nodded. Thom walked to the door. Blood still dripping from her hands. She opened it. The war chief stood 10 feet away, calm as the moon. His eyes met hers. You should have died with your sister, he said in Apache. Thoma raised the revolver. He didn't flinch. Come then. she said. And what you started? He rushed. She fired once, missed. He tackled her. The revolver knocked free. They crashed into the snow. He raised a blade. Calder appeared, grabbed the war chief by the collar, flung him back. The chief hit the ground, rolled, rose. They circled. Calder had a knife. So did the war chief. You came to take her? Calder growled. You'll leave. With nothing. The fight was brutal. Fast. Knife against knife. Calder bled from a cut on his shoulder. The war chief from his side. They clashed like two storms silent. Deadly.Thom grabbed the revolver again. The chief pinned Calder. She fired. The bullet struck the chief in the neck. He staggered back, blood pouring, eyes wide. He fell to his knees, choking. Calder stood, breathing hard. Tahoma walked up, looked down at the man who had haunted her since she was a girl. Then she fired again. He fell, unmoving. Neither of them spoke. The snow fell gently around them. Later, Calder built a pyre with the dead. Tahoma helped. They lit it together. As flames rose into the sky, she spoke quietly. My people believe fire carries the soul to the afterlife, even evil ones. Doesn't seem fair, Calder said. No, but it's not for us to decide. They stood watching. A fire for a long time. Eventually, they returned to the cabin. Blood had dried on the floor. The air still smelled of smoke, but something was different. Tahoma looked around, then sat near the hearth. This place isn't a grave anymore, she said. No, Calder agreed. It's something else. She looked at him. Maybe it can be a home. He met her gaze, steady. Maybe it already is. The snow didn't fall as often anymore. Spring lingered just beyond the edges of the trees, hesitant but coming, and the silence on the land was no longer hostile. It was healing. Where ash and blood once soaked the ground, green pushed through. Tentative shoots rising through the frost. Calder stood on the porch, sleeves rolled up, boots wet from creek water, eyes tracking the hills like he still expected riders to crest the ridge. But there were none. Not since that night. Behind him, the cabin creaked with new weight. He'd added a room. Two, actually. One was a storeroom, firewood, canned goods, ammo. The other, smaller, had a window that faced the sunrise. Tahoma had chosen its direction herself. She said she wanted to wake with light on her face, not shadows. She stepped outside now, barefoot, wrapped in one of the old blankets he used to think would never warm anyone again. Her hair had grown longer since winter, brushed smooth now instead of tangled. She still moved carefully, the injury to her ankle flaring in the cold, but her steps no longer carried fear. They carried ownership. You finished the fence? She asked, voice still soft in the mornings, mostly. He handed her a mug of coffee. One post keeps leaning like it's drunk. Maybe it misses the war chief, she said with a dry smirk. He laughed. Not the small, reluctant one from before. A full sound. A sound that once seemed like it had died with Elise and never would return. They sat together on the edge of the porch. Jasper came up and dropped a rabbit at Calder's boots, then flopped down between them. The world, for a moment, felt like it had always been this way. Tahoma sipped the coffee, looked into the trees. Do you think it's really over? I think he's dead, Calder said. And so are the men who followed him. That's not what I asked. He looked out toward the horizon. I think what he did doesn't vanish just because he's gone. Same way Elise being gone didn't stop her ghost from living here. But I think things don't haunt us forever, unless we let them. She didn't answer for a long time. When? She finally spoke. It was so quiet he almost didn't hear. I still see Neela sometimes, in my sleep. Sometimes when I'm cooking, or planting. It's like she's just waiting for me to say she's free. He didn't pretend to have the right words. Instead, he reached over, placed a calloused hand gently over hers. "She is," he said. "Because you lived." Tahoma didn't pull away. Her fingers curled slightly around his. She nodded, just once. The days grew longer. The creek thawed. Birds returned. Calder taught her to ride again. Not just for fleeing, but for freedom. She took to it slowly, but with quiet confidence. Every loop around the field made her posture straighter. Sometimes she shouted to the sky not words, just breath and power, and it made Calder's chest ache in a way that felt alive. She carved new tools, rebuilt shelves in the cabin, repaired the shattered window with pieces of colored glass she found buried in an old storage trunk. When the sunlight hit it just right in the evening, it cast warm patterns across the floor. She told him the Apache believed color like that could trap spirits and confuse the dead. "I'll take confusing over haunting," he said. She'd smiled. They didn't talk about what they were, not in words. There was no moment where he asked. And she said yes. No declarations. Just the slow, sure merging of lives. 2 cups at breakfast. 2 pairs of boots drying by the door. 2 rifles cleaned together each night that one morning. She stood in the field, facing the sun, arms outstretched. He watched her from the porch, heart full, thinking he'd never seen anything so fierce and peaceful all at once. When she came back, he handed her a piece of paper. She looked down at the crude sketch he'd made her, standing in that exact pose, drawn with rough lines, but careful reverence. "It's not perfect," he said. She traced a finger over it. "It is," she said. In town, rumors still traveled. The war chief's death had sent ripples through the hills. Calder had ridden in once or twice, kept his visits brief. People had noticed the change in him, how he stood straighter, looked people in the eye again. No one asked questions. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't. Either way, no one came looking. Tahoma didn't go with him, not yet. The idea of crowds still pressed against her ribs like iron bars. But she asked him to bring back fabric, seeds, a book on birds. She was building a garden near the stream. She wanted color. She wanted flight. One night, thunder rolled in from the west. They were inside, her braiding something by the fire, him cleaning the old revolver she'd used to end the war chief's life. The wind shook the windows. Lightning split the sky. He looked at her hands, so steady now, so sure. "You ever think about leaving here?" he asked. She looked up. "You trying to get rid of me?" "Never." She leaned back against the wall. The firelight made her eyes gold. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be. I've been a ghost in too many places. This is the first place I came back to life." He set the revolver down, walked to her, sat beside her. "I used to think this house was where I'd die," he said. "Now I think it's where something's beginning." She reached up, touched his face gently. Her fingers traced the scar on his chin, the one from a bar fight, long before the war or Elise. He let her. Then she leaned forward, kissed him once, soft and certain. "I want to plant apricots," she whispered after. He blinked. "What?" "In the garden. Apricot trees. You've got the right sun, right soil." He smiled. "Then we'll plant them." They did, the next day. Together, they dug holes in the thawing ground, placed seeds, packed soil. Tahoma sang something in her language. As they worked a song of returning, maybe. Or thanks. He didn't ask. He just listened. They painted the new room's door blue. It was her favorite color. He carved her name into the beam above the porch, her Apache name, with the right spelling, the one she taught him carefully, slowly, until he said it properly. She cried the first time he said it without stumbling. On the first true warm day, She took him up the ridge, the place where the war chief had once watched from. They stood there together, overlooking the valley. "Do you think he saw all this?" she asked. "I don't think he could have imagined it," Calder said. She nodded. "We should build something up here," she said. "A bench, maybe a stone. With Neela's name. We will. Not to mourn," she added. "To mark survival." They stood hand in hand, the wind clean and sharp around them. No longer cruel dot in the weeks that followed, they prepared the house for summer. Calder fixed the roof. Tohoma made curtains from the fabric he'd brought back. The dog grew fatter, lazier. The birds built nests in the eaves. A fox visited once. She left meat for it. It returned the next night, bold and unafraid. They laughed. More dot they argued, too, about small things. Where to store tools, whether the pan was clean. But the tension never lasted. It broke like kindling in their fire brief, burnt and replaced with warmth. One evening, he brought her a small pouch. Inside was a ring nothing fancy. Just a smooth iron band carved from the barrel of the rifle that had misfired the night. He almost died. "A symbol, not a claim. I don't expect anything," he said. "I just wanted you to know, this place, this life, none of it works without you." She stared at the ring a long time. Then, without a word, slipped it on. She didn't need to say yes. She'd been saying it every day since the snow stopped falling. Time passed. The apricots bloomed. She painted the porch with handprints, hers, Calder's, even Jasper's paw. She said it was to confuse the spirits, so they'd never know who to follow. Some nights, they sat on the bench by Neela's stone and watched the stars. Calder would ask her to tell stories, legends, myths, the songs of the river people. She'd laugh, correct his pronunciation, and teach him anyway. And always, before sleep, she'd whisper, "We're still here." He'd whisper back, and, "We're not done yet," because even in peace there was work. There were fences to mend, seeds to plant, fires to light, and wounds that only time and love could tend. But it was work they chose, not suffering they endured. They had built something stronger than revenge or grief. They had built a home. And in the stillness of that land, between the trees and the sky, it stood not as a cabin, not as a refuge, but as proof that even the broken can heal, even the hunted can rest, and even a lonely widower and a wounded Apache woman could find something neither dared dream the longing.